In order. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice requirements in the New Jersey Budget Ease have been satisfied by forwarding news released to the Asbury Park Press on December 12, 2013, stating that a regular meeting of the ToCN County Committee would be held August 13, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. Town Hall. Notice requirements have been posted on Township Bulletin Board. Copy is on file in the office of the Township Clerk.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Schatzel.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Engel.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Orgo.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mayor McNow.
Here. Number one on the agenda for this evening is the approval of meeting minutes. We have three of them: June 11th, June 25th, and July 9th. Any comments from the committee on the minutes? Take them individually or all together?
No comments, then you can take them.
All right, can we vote those? Motion on this, please? Did we move on? Motion on?
Yeah, we need a motion.
Yeah, I'll take a motion on. So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Schatzel.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Engel.
Yes, just would note that on June 11th, for those items that I was not present for, I'd like to abstain.
Noted Committeeman Orgo.
Yes.
Committeeman Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mayor McNow.
Yes, except to abstain for June 25th, I was not present.
So noted.
I'm going to go off agenda real quick. At the request of the police department, I have a mayor's proclamation to read this evening. It is supporting the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over 2014 state crackdown, and it reads as follows. Whereas impaired drivers on our nation's roads kill somewhat every 30 minutes, 50 people per day, and almost 18,000 people each year. And whereas 19% of motor vehicle fatalities in New Jersey in 2012 were alcohol related, and whereas an enforcement crackdown is planned to combat impaired driving, and whereas the summer season and the Labor Day holiday in particular are traditionally times of social gatherings which include alcohol, and whereas the State of New Jersey Division of Highway Traffic Safety has asked law enforcement agencies throughout the state to participate in the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over 2014 statewide crackdown, and whereas the project will involve increased impaired driving enforcement from August 15th through September 1st, 2014, and whereas an increase in impaired driving enforcement and a reduction in impaired driving will save lives on our roadways. Therefore, I, Russell Nacknell, Mayor of the Township of Colts Neck, do hereby proclaim and declare the support of the Township of Colts Neck for the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over 2014 statewide crackdown from August 15th through September 1st, 2014, and pledge to increase awareness of the dangers of drinking and driving.
Can I
Go back to the minutes for
July 9th? Beth, in July 9th, I just noticed that I wasn't listed as present even though I was here. I told Marvina I was here, so.
You look correct.
Okay.
Okay, number two on the agenda this evening is ordinance 2014-15, an ordinance making the provisions of subtitle 1 of Title 39 pursuant to NJSA 39:5A-1 of the revised statutes of New Jersey applicable to the Huddy's Inn Restaurant, Block 48, Lot 19. This is the second reading by title, and for those not present last time, this ordinance will simply allow our police department to enforce the motor vehicle code in the parking lot of the new Huddy's located on Route 547. Any comments from the committee? No comments.
So moved.
That's going to be a public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, seeing no comments from the committee, I'll open the ordinance to public hearing. Any comments from the residents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll take a motion on that, please.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Schatzel.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Engel.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Orgo.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mayor McNow.
Yes. Number 3 this evening, ordinance 2014-16 is an ordinance amending and revising Chapter 120 Firearms of the Code of the Township of Colts Neck. This is a second reading by title. And before I entertain comments from the committee and ultimately open the matter to a public hearing, I have a statement that I'm going to read to outline the history of what has transpired with our efforts in the township to control the deer population and what I expect from the public here tonight. The Colts Neck Township Committee has been attempting for at least 2 years to address the deer problem in the township. which has resulted in numerous motor vehicle accidents, cases of Lyme's disease, ecologic and economic harm. In 2012, then Mayor Engel formed the Deer Management Subcommittee in an effort to delineate the scope of the problem. At a special meeting on November 29, 2012, that subcommittee presented a report to the Township Committee, which was accompanied by a presentation from representatives from New Jersey Fish and Wildlife. The subcommittee recommended that hunting be permitted in accordance with state law. The state concluded that bow hunting by licensed hunters is a safe sport, deer hunting by licensed hunters would follow the state hunting season, and hunting is an efficient and effective way to address deer management and would be free to the township. Numerous residents spoke publicly both for and against the recommendation. On January 5, 2013, Mayor Michael Fitzgerald was sworn in. He stated that he would be forming a wildlife committee to address deer, geese, and other wildlife. On January 9, 2013, at a regular Township Committee meeting, Mayor Fitzgerald announced the formation of that committee and stated his intent to continue the discussion which began at the November 29, 2012 meeting. The committee was comprised of residents on both sides of the issue, including vocal opponents who subsequently resigned. A survey was designed to gauge Township residents' assessment of the deer problem and possible solutions. Members of the public were encouraged to attend the Wildlife Committee meetings, although few did. Meetings were held in 2013 on March 14, April 11, April 30, June 10, July 11, September 12, and October 23. On October 30, 2013, the Wildlife Committee made a presentation to the Township Committee in which it summarized the results of a Township survey and the various alternatives for deer management. It was again recommended that hunting be permitted in accordance with state law, with certain zones accepted. Members of the public on both sides of the issue commented publicly. After considering the sentiments of some residents, the committee opted not to vote on the proposed amendment to the no discharge ordinance, instead choosing to have the Wildlife Subcommittee hold additional meetings in an effort to address residents' concerns. I was sworn in as mayor on January 14, 2014. In my remarks, I set forth two goals for this year, one of which included addressing the deer problem in the township. My remarks were well reported in local periodicals, including a lengthy article in the news transcript. I strongly encourage members of the public to participate in order that residents' concerns could be addressed and forthcoming action to be taken by the Township Committee. Meetings of the Wildlife Subcommittee were held on January 15th, February 10th, March 4th, May 20th, and June 16th, 2004. I attended each of the meetings. Not a single resident opposed to expanding hunting in the township attended the first three meetings. I stated in published remarks that I was extremely disappointed that residents were not attending the meetings to offer their input on how to reach a compromise solution to addressing the deer problem. The Wildlife Subcommittee recommended to me, without anticipated input from members of the community, that hunting be permitted on parcels of 3 acres or more in accordance with state law with owner's consent. I rejected that proposal. Instead, I felt that a more appropriate starting point would be to allow hunting on parcels of 5 acres or more in accordance with state law, and that hunting be limited to white-tailed deer only. I publicly stated that my sole goal was to attempt to control the white-tailed deer population. I further stated that I wanted to start with larger parcels of property in an effort to compromise with those residents opposed to hunting. Further, I believe that the township would be in a position to measure the efficacy of increased hunting with the hope of an increase in deer taken by at least 20% without adverse impact on the community. The intent was to reevaluate the amended ordinance in the spring 2015 under the guidance of Mayor Schatzl to determine whether it was effective without any such adverse impact. A few members of the community, including former Mayor Scotty, attended the May 20th Wildlife Subcommittee meeting. Mayor Scotty and other attendees were provided with a copy of the proposed ordinance amendment, which would permit hunting on parcels of 5 acres or larger with owner's consent in accordance with state law. I invited Mayor Scotty and the other attendees to comment on the proposal, offer ways to improve it, and otherwise make it more palatable to those opposed to hunting, if not acceptable. Neither Mayor Scotty nor any other members of the public offered any comments on the proposed ordinance amendment. Rather, she focused on her belief that members of the public were unaware of what was transpiring at the Wildlife Subcommittee meetings. She encouraged the subcommittee to hold another well-publicized meeting in June to allow members of the public to comment on the proposed ordinance amendment. It was Please. It was my intent to offer the proposed ordinance amendment for introduction at the June 11, 2014 Township Committee meeting. However, at the behest of Mayor Scotti, I agreed to have another Wildlife Subcommittee meeting on June 16th. I beseech Mayor Scotti and others to encourage members of the public, especially those passionate on the subject, to attend that meeting with the continued hope of having a thorough discourse on the subject and ultimately a proposed ordinance amendment reasonably acceptable to most of those opposed. I sincerely hope to have everybody's voice heard and avoid a repeat of the lengthy committee meeting on October 30th, 2013, which ultimately did not result in any affirmative action being taken by the committee. Unfortunately, 2 people attended the June 16th meeting. One individual spoke in favor of the proposal, the other was concerned about hunting in greenways. Former Mayor Scotti did not attend the meeting, which lasted no more than 15 minutes. I fully expected former Mayor Scotti to encourage members of the public to attend that meeting in the spirit of reaching a compromise on the issue. It appears that former Mayor Scotti had no interest in reaching a compromise or offering any constructive input into improving upon the ordinance amendment. Rather, she waited until this meeting, in which the ordinance amendment is set to be adopted, to disseminate misleading information in an apparent effort to have the ordinance defeated. I find it most unfortunate that a former community leader felt the need to resort to political gamesmanship in an effort to further her agenda, rather than engage in discussions on the subject and ultimately a compromise solution. I have been and continue to be willing to discuss this issue with members of the public. However, it is difficult to have discussions when almost nobody attended any of the subcommittee meetings which were dedicated to the discussion of the subject. For example, I understand from recent emails that some people are concerned about the 150-foot distance for notched arrows. Although there is some dispute of the legality of deviating from that distance, which is specified in the state statute, I was willing and continue to be willing to discuss a deviation. However, that is not going to occur tonight. The only way to judge the efficacy of this ordinance amendment is to have it in effect in the beginning of the deer hunting season in September. Accordingly, the ordinance amendment will be voted on tonight in its present form. I continue to encourage residents to attend Wildlife Subcommittee meetings, in which I will be receptive to further efforts to address the concerns of residents and entertaining proposed improvements to the ordinance, so long as they further the goal of controlling the white-tailed deer population in the township of Colts Neck. There have been at least 14 township committee and subcommittee meetings at which the public has had an opportunity to be heard on the issue of deer control in the township. For this reason, and to afford all members of the public the opportunity to comment, I'm going to impose ground rules for comment concerning this ordinance only. They are as follows. Be sure to state your name and address and state how many deer or wildlife subcommittees you attended on this subject. Limit your comments to the proposed ordinance. I am not going to entertain comments on the broader issues, including whether there is a deer problem and the various possible means of controlling the population. You will only be allowed to speak once, and your comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Questions will not be entertained, and there will be no discourse or conversations with other members of the public. This is an opportunity to comment publicly. These rules will be strictly enforced. Regardless of the disposition of tonight's vote on this ordinance, there will be continued efforts by the Colts Neck Township Committee to address the deer population in the township. We will continue to hold Wildlife Subcommittee meetings, the dates of which can be found on the township website. The number of deer taken this year versus those taken last year will be evaluated next year to determine the impact of these dangers and whether any further action needs to be taken. I continue to strongly encourage the residents of Colts Neck to involve themselves in this ongoing process. I thank the members of the Wildlife Subcommittee for their hard work. I hope that the state of New Jersey will soon find the wisdom to recognize that deer overpopulation is a public health problem that warrants action at the state level. In the absence of any such action, Colts Neck will make every effort to address the problem. Doing nothing is simply not an option. And with that, I would open up the ordinance to comments by the committee. Gentlemen, any comments?
We've covered most of it. We spent many a night here over this, trying to work it out so that we could get different resolutions and different ideas from different people. But even the state will tell you the easiest way to do it and the cheapest way for the township is by hunting. Everybody's worried about how many more hunters we lose in. I don't think you're going to see any more hunters coming to this town. If you do, maybe 10. I don't think that's going to be a problem. They're more worried about what they don't know than rather than what they do know.
Gentlemen, any other comments?
The only comment I have is I would encourage everyone from the public, and it's, we've been sitting through a lot of these meetings. For many of you folks, I don't recognize all the faces. Some that I do. It's good to have you at a meeting. Obviously, unfortunately, we can only have all of you come times that there's a meeting, there's a particular issue that's of concern for you. I wish we had more people at the meeting. That would be wonderful. I would encourage everyone to read the actual ordinance. This is not an ordinance, it's not a statement, it's not a position being taken by this committee or anyone else as to whether you agree or don't agree with hunting. This is not about whether you agree with the concept of hunting a particular animal or not, whether you agree with firearm possession by individuals or you don't. It is a particular ordinance with specific reference to this town and the discharge of firearms in particular circumstances in particular areas. So if you're unsure, trust reading the ordinance itself that's on the website. Don't trust anyone else's interpretation, quite frankly, including ours. Go read it yourself and draw your own conclusions. You all have a vested interest in this town, and I would encourage everybody to draw their own conclusions. Okay,
Anything else? No? Well, with that, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm going to do this. I know a lot of people are going to want to speak, but I think I'm going to start from the back of the room and work my way forward, and then work with the folks in the anteroom over there, and then finally finish up over here. And so, folks in the back row, the very back row that want to talk, if you could put your hands up, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to start over with this name and I'm
It seems to me that we're out of order in not allowing the people in the outer room to participate in this meeting. They have rights, I think. I'll ask Mr. Bennett if that's the case. Or do they have to be provided with some other means to get this information in the other room?
They're here.
Is anyone out there having problems hearing us?
Yes.
Why don't you come on in the room? There's places in the back over here. I apologize we don't have enough seats, but we certainly come on the other side over here. Don't be bashful. Come on around the front.
Few people standing out. Camera guys here. No, you get back here? Yeah, you guys got to get close so the camera can see.
Sir, let me get behind you.
I don't know where.
All right, Mr. Stanley, thank you. Gentlemen, stand up. Yes. All right, folks. A lot of people in this room, I need you to be quiet, otherwise people are not going to be heard.
My name is Rick Orris. At 22 Mountainside Drive. I attended no prior meetings, but I still have a vested interest having been a resident for more than 30 years. I want to address 3 points: safety zone specifics as defined in the state ordinance, bow characteristics, and the process for change. Safety zone characteristics, I think you've outlined very well. The proposal is to reduce the radius from an occupied building from 450 feet to 150 feet. In other words, a factor of 3. The safety zone area is a function of the square of that, so we're reducing the safety zone area by a factor of 9. Just so everybody understand that, from 14.6 acres to 1.6, just so that you understand. The safety zone is from an occupied building, not necessarily where you might have people on your property. If you've got a playground on your property, if you've got a patio, if you've got a pool deck, where you might have people out there, they may be closer to, to the hunting zone than your occupied building, which is the case in our property. Bow characteristics. Modern hunting is compound bows, that's a long bow, or crossbow. A crossbow has a velocity of roughly 250 miles an hour from the bow. A compound bow, a little less, about 200. Both of those bows can kill. They have enough force to kill black bear at 100 feet. Most hunters will only shoot between about 75 and 150 feet, but those missiles can easily go 2 or 3 times that range. In other words, easily 300 to 450 feet, sometimes with deadly force. Okay. I'm going to leap ahead to the proposal process that Mayor Macnow has outlined. You know, it's going to be a township committee resolution rather than a referendum. Everybody is affected in the community because these properties that are now being opened up after people have lived here under a different set of rules for 20 to 30 years are suddenly going to represent more liability. Who's taking on the liability? Is the township committee taking it on personally? I don't think so. Right now they're indemnified, meaning the residents will have to pay for any liability that occurs because of this change in ordinance.
Okay. About 2 minutes. Can I have anybody else on the last row that would like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Back at Beauty, 19 Beaver Dam Road. As you may know, I went around with a petition, the blocks around me, Brentwood and okay. 95% of the people were against it. Now, it seems to me like maybe 85% of the tax base of this town is against it. I have 2 arrows over here that people handed me that were signing the petition, one of which landed in Dr. Gabberti's yard, which is a couple of feet from Dan's child, Charlie, where he plays. Not only he was there. Another one landed by the mailbox where Mrs. Shapiro at 10 Beaver Dam would be getting her mail or driving in to her house. Both were shot from Green Acres. Both had the direction in the ground from Green Acres. I have pictures of them. There are 2 tree stands in Green Acres behind 32 or 28 Brentwood. There were 4 tree stands there. My point, nobody's listening to any kind of rules or anything. We're all feel like our security is being hijacked. And 150 feet is ridiculous. These 2 arrows traveled at least 350 feet each. It's not reasonable. And we went through this last time. You know I was vocal about it. I don't want to make the same points and sound repetitious. You guys voted on it. You voted no almost unanimously, except Mr. Logo. What's changed here? We have more houses built, and we're going to have more houses built. How will we ever roll this back? Somebody's going to get an arrow in them. Somebody's going to get robbed. Somebody's going to get raped. They're going to come and sue all of us. You, me, the town, everybody. There's a woman who sent a letter to you guys at the farm. She wants to be no discharge. She wants to be no discharge because she's afraid somebody's going to go on her property and shoot an arrow. This woman's being harassed all the time. She's got 12 acres. People are knocking on her door. They want to hunt. She's got a beautiful piece of land. There's a lot of deer there. They drive right up her 80-foot driveway and they harass the living daylights out of her. She sent a letter. Bob has it. She wants out. She wants to opt out. At least if you're going to do this 5-acre thing, give people a chance to, shade in their property so nobody could, so they feel like they're indemnified from any legal action. And another thing is, are people with 5 acres going to be allowed to have as many hunters as they want, sell tickets to their land, have a bed and breakfast? I mean, is that the direction we're going in here? A hunting town? This was going like, we were going to be a Rumson, and now we're going to be a freehold. I just don't get it. I don't know. That's about all I'm going to say.
Anybody else in the last row? All right, let's move out to the next to the last row. You're cheating a little bit. Gentlemen, put your hands up there.
Yeah, Christopher, Beaver Dam Road. Mr. Mayor, I have to ask you a question. Do you believe in the rule of majority?
So I indicated in my remarks that I'm not going to entertain questions. We're not having a discourse here tonight. If you'd like to make comments.
This sounds, forgive me, I'm editorializing, but this sounds like Chicago, and that's what we're getting. You don't care what the majority of your town thinks about this situation. So what you're doing, you 5 people here are putting your wills over the will of, and I have no idea what the results would be, of an open vote tonight.
Anybody else in the second to last row?
Thank you for recognizing.
Sure. Anybody else in the second to last row, ma'am?
Robin Weiner, 5 Beaver Dam Road, Coltsneck. I had made an effort to find out whether one of the rumors and one of the reasons given for non-professional hunting in Coltsneck was valid. $1,200 per deer was floated on the internet. It's been floated here. It's been floated on in emails. I contacted White Buffalo Inc., who did for the last 14 years Sharpshooting and Professional Hunting, and I think they're a not-profit organization, in Princeton in the year 2000, 2014. They advise, and this is from Mr. DiMacosa, who runs the show there. It costs it costs the people of
$300.
yeah, it costs about, I'm sorry, bear with me for a second. Okay, it costs, I'm sorry, I looked you up. The bottom line costs between $300 and $400 per deer. The price went up to like $375 because there were fewer deer to be hunted in the year 2014. They claim that the sharpshooters have reduced collisions by 80%. And they only have like 70, 80 deer taken off the road, where they used to have like 350 deer taken off the roads. Their population in Princeton is approximately 16,000. We're approximately 10,000 plus. There's 60% or 50% more people in Princeton, and they have elected, not breaking the bank, to do it professionally. Now, I feel a little bit guilty saying this because I love the deer, and I really don't want to see them dead. But I recognize we do have a problem on the highway. We saw about 7 or 8 of them on the way in today to this meeting. I love the deer. I like what they do to my landscape because I don't have to prune it. But I believe that we have to do this safely. And my neighbors across the street, their lives are more valuable than $350 it costs, to do a deer and kill it right.
Folks, please be reminded, try to confine ourselves to the ordinance amendment rather than other proposed alternatives to the hunting, which, if you come to the wildlife subcommittee meeting, I would be more than happy to or even offline, to talk about it.
I think the bottom line of it, one more sentence, and that's that the hunting in and of itself, unprofessional and unsupervised, doesn't cull the deer enough.
Sir?
Yes, I only have one comment, and that is on the, oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Mayor.
Peter, we know you, but not everybody does know.
Okay, Peter Berman, 5 Beaver Dam Road. I have not attended any subcommittee meetings. I only have one comment, and that's on the 150 feet. There was an improvement with the 5 acres. I think we will have to acknowledge that from the prior ordinance. But the 150 feet applies to a dwelling. And the question I have is, if you read the statute, it says while within 150 feet. And that while within does not say minimum, maximum. Certainly, it's ambiguous at best or unclear at worst. But imagine a scenario where this could occur. A licensed hunter is legally standing on, oh, by the way, I don't think the statute was written with Colts Neck in mind with large lot zoning. And why do I say that? Is that imagine a legally licensed hunter on property, on boundary line of property A. There's a dwelling 150 feet from him, and we have large backyards and large front yards in Colts Neck. A deer steps in front of him 10 feet away. The builder cocks his arrow, whatever he does, the deer makes 2 steps, and that arrow is in your neighbor's backyard. Notwithstanding the fact that the dwelling is 150 feet away. So the problem I have with the ordinance here is the 150 feet. I think it's just too small, given the nature of the large lot zoning in this community.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else over there in that corner? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dr. Joanne Gualberti. I live on Rimwood Lane, and this is my first meeting. Excuse me?
Thank you.
The arrow that Mr. Caputi referred to is found in my yard, only about 20 feet away from the doors that access my yard. I have young children playing back there. I have 5-year-olds, my niece and my nephew. If not hit by a direct shot from an arrow, if they see that on the floor, if they saw that on the floor, the first thing that they would want to do is play with that and quite possibly get hurt. When my nephew saw that, the first thing that he asked was, can I touch that? So again, if not from a direct shot from an arrow, if children find that arrow on the floor, we got to pick that up and start playing with that.
Yeah, just a reminder, folks, hunting on township property, including the greenways, has been and continues to be illegal in this township. If you ever see anybody hunting in the greenway or on township property, please call the police. It is not legal. It wasn't legal. It's not going to be legal. The folks that you're referencing would have been in violation of state law before. They'll be in violation of state law now. That will not change. But you have to seek enforcement. When you see people breaking the law, whether it's a hunting law or somebody driving along impaired, please call the police. Anybody else in that corner over there?
One more thing. That's after the fact. Who's there to enforce as they're shooting right behind our backyards?
Any other comments?
I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Janine Unger, 11 Rancho Polo. My property backs up to 96 acres of farm. My dwelling, I would say, is over 200 feet from my back fence. So if someone were hunting on the opposite side of the fence and my children were playing in their yard, we could be 10 feet away. It's ridiculous. 150 feet is absurd and dangerous.
Any other comments from anybody in the corner over there? All right, let's go to that.
Me, but
Yes, sir.
I might be the
We're getting there.
second row.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Don't forget to state your name and address.
Be the devil's advocate.
Name and address.
David Barclay, Route 537 East, 169 Eastmont Orchards. We're intensive farmers, and I can tell you, the deer are like fleas over there. And they probably chewed off 20% of our growth this year after this cold winter because of all the snow. Let's see, my dad, let's get a little history now. My dad's 88, he was born in 1926 in Colts Neck, and when he was a boy, he said there were no deer. And the hunters that wanted to go out hunting had to go to the pine barrens because the hunters naturally controlled the deer population. My feeling is you'd probably have to be 50 times more injured by an arrow in a toy shop and a handgun in New York City. That's my feeling.
Quiet, please.
It's imperative.
They'll respect your right to speak. You respect his.
Could I interrupt?
No, you cannot.
He's not talking about the ordinance. You're violating your own rules.
Sir, if you don't keep your mouth shut and allow him to speak, I'm going to ask you to leave. You understand?
Last sentence, it's imperative that the township and the committee vote in favor of this ordinance.
All right, Vince, go ahead.
Vince Domitian, Revolutionary Road. I have not attended any of those committee meetings, but I have followed the issue. From my reading of the ordinance, this actually constitutes a modest increment over what is currently allowed by expanding it to 5-acre properties. And it in no way reduces or compromises the ability, the rights of the owners of a 5-acre or larger parcel who does not want hunting on their property to say no and to have that decision enforced. People cannot, as I understand it, cannot come onto your property without your permission, cannot hunt without your permission, and they are subject to the law enforcement as would they would be if they came for any other purpose. So therefore, I think this is a relatively modest change, and I support it because of all the benefits that will accrue and all the damage that is being done without it. Thank you.
Third to the last row. Yes, sir, the orange at the end.
My name is Ken Rogers, and I'm also on Beaver Dam Road. And I can't believe that getting a petition by 25% of the group here is just trying to influence you rather than 1,000 people out there. I'm 100% for the ordinance. I've been here 40 years. There weren't any deer here when I was here, very few. And I had 5 sleeping in my front yard 2 nights ago when I came home. And I don't like that. And I think you're doing your job by getting this ordinance passed. I think a handful of people, a small petition, should not sway you in any way. I signed that petition by mistake last year. I would never do it again. I'm 100% behind what they're doing, and I think that's your responsibility. Thank you.
Sure, sorry.
Yeah, Tony Costa, 133 Cedar Drive. I haven't appeared at any of the prior meetings for the committee. Rightly so, I think, because you had a committee set up, it was supposed to be independent, it was mostly hunters. You had one independent woman on there, Shatzman, she quit publicly in front of this committee, and she stated why she quit, because it was so unfair. And no one, and I got up that night, and I said, why don't we investigate what this committee person is saying? No one investigated that, to my knowledge. Now, getting back to, I'm going to want like 2 minutes on run. Getting back to the ordinance of 150 feet, you got to be ridiculous. I listened to your meeting on July 9th. I had the ability to listen to your meeting. Not once did you mention the 150 feet that everybody was concerned with. You were concerned with from 2 acres to 3 acres, and then this big deal, 5 acres. Are you kidding? 5 acres is not that big. I owned 10 acres once on Bucks Mill in Fremont. It was only 660 by 600 by 660. When you take out the building and the barn, there was no room to even shoot, much less a shotgun than a bow and arrow. Now, bow and arrow, which the state allows now, which is ridiculous at 150 feet, that's a minimum requirement, and I proved that to you under the Panacucci case, and I gave that to your attorney. I proved that to you last year. You still mention that we want to be in accordance with state law. Come on. These people are not fools. They're mostly educated. You have the right, you're for the statute, great, but I'm against it. You make it 10 acres, you make it 300 feet for a bow and arrow, because the trajectory of a bow and arrow at 184 miles per hour, that's the average, goes 270 feet a minute. It's only valid at about 20 or 30 yards. After 20 or 30 yards, the trajectory goes down. Tony Orko, he knows that. He's a hunter. He knows that. You know, most of these animals are just injured, and it's one of the most malicious ways of killing something. It's by a razor blade, and the idea is to make the animal hemorrhage to death. You know, if bow hunters were interested in culling the deer population, if they were interested in that, they would not be interested in bow hunting. They would be interested in a shotgun and a quick death. But you know what? It's not overpopulation that's their issue, or that's on their menu. It's recreation. That's it. Thank you.
Anybody else in that room? Yes, sir.
George Schultz, 61 Beaver Dam Road. You answered my one question. It's not allowed on green acres. Okay. I would suggest then that we post green acres. I know that the ordinance says we're going to have signs coming into town saying that there's a hunting ordinance in town that have to go to police headquarters. But I think we should, especially between Rimwood and Wood Hollow, there's a big green acres area where these people live. I think that should be posted.
I can discuss that with you offline.
And patrolled.
It's something that we'll talk about. I can discuss that with you offline.
Thank you.
Anybody else in that row? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sarah Devine, and I live at 74 Cross Road. The reason why I'm here tonight is that there's not a day I go by in the morning or the afternoon without seeing or heard a deer in my yard. I love animals, but both my husband and my cars have been hit. Every time my children go out at night, I'm saying, please be careful, be careful. They hang out at Laird and Cross Road. There's constant ecological reasons for it, and I wanted to get a permit to have the deer hunting on my property. I have over 11 acres, and my area is designated as no deer hunting. And the reason I'm here tonight is that I'm for your ordinance, and I would welcome the opportunity to have something be done for the community, for our children's lives, and for the ecological, for ToCN.
Anybody else in that room? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sue Fitzpatrick, Assistant Fairway Bus. I'm in favor of the ordinance. I have 4 children that grew up in this town. 3 of them, the deer hit the car, not vice versa. I'm more concerned about the safety of my children, which I know these people were talking about, but you have to have permission to hunt there. You can't just go out on Rimwood or Wood Hollow and hunt. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about 5 acres, and you have to get permission to be able to hunt. So I'm in favor of the ordinance for the safety of my children.
Anybody else in that row? Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah. Paul Wilcox, 92 Clover Hill Road. I just wanted to just kind of echo, there's no guarantee of efficacy. In other words, this ordinance is being advanced, but in fact there's no numbers saying we're going to actually see fewer deer. We may see more hunters, but not necessarily fewer deer, particularly by the time the deer figure out where the ordinance does apply. So the whole question of professional hunters or other means really, in my view, was not compared numerically with the expected results of this ordinance, and I think you're moving at it too fast.
Anybody else in that row? Move to the, yes, Mr. Walsh.
Philip Walsh, 61 Tulip Lane. And full disclosure, I'm not a hunter, I don't own a gun, and I don't own a bow and arrow. I lived for many years in the Midwest in suburban areas around large cities. And I know that in the Midwest, deer hunting is akin to a religion, especially in the fall. Okay? But in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, etc., you have to drive a considerable distance to find a deer. The people in the Midwest are not so stupid as to allow herds to run through neighborhoods willy-nilly. And I say, I was told that when you move to the east, that's where all the smart and sophisticated people live. I've been here 22 years, and I've met a lot of smart, sophisticated people. And I haven't always agreed with the Township Committee on every one of their issues as a member of the Cold Snake Seniors, but I plead with the 5 of you, or at least 3 of you, to vote in this ordinance, because I'm sure it's not perfect, but it's a start. And maybe my grandchildren will see New Jersey catch up with the Midwest. Thank you.
All right, let's move over to the next one, the front row. Mr. Apatello?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My name is Anthony Apatello. I've been a resident of Cold Snake for 67 years. I understand the concern of the people in the back, but I also want to say some facts. In the last 10 years, the deer population has tripled in Cold Snake. Fact number 2, 8 days ago, a young lady was driving a car on 5 Point Road, not to hit the deer, but grace of God, she just missed a tree, didn't get hurt. This morning, Mr. Frank Esposito told me we almost had a head-on accident on Route 34. I understand their concern, but we also got to understand that we have to do something. We're in an epidemic. We're going to have people killed on roads. In fact, just talked to an insurance agent. Or just talked, there's 2 people in the last 3 months that I know have gotten Lyme disease. Now, also, for the 67 years I spent in Cold Snake, I never heard of anyone being shot by a bow or an arrow or a shotgun. Now, I'm not naive. You're going to have people come to this town that are not obeying the law. And I understand what you said, sir. We have a police department. We have a good fish and game control. We should educate the people what to do should they have a problem with hunters. That they can reach out to someone they know there's help. Now, we're getting pretty close to getting someone killed in Cold Snake by deer, by hitting a deer or something happening. And I wish I had the figures what the accidents were, deers hitting cars. So I understand their concern, and we have to do something. I don't know if that's the answer, but I hope instead of knocking something down, they have constructive criticism to show what we can do. We've got to lower the herd some way or another.
Okay, anybody else in at the second row?
Elaine Mann, 587 Route 34. I do have hunters on my property, and they're really responsible. They're vetted. They have to register with the state. And also, I would hate for any of you to have to meet a buck on your property and he charges you, because that happened to me in my own backyard. So I'm all for this ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Viola?
Michael Viola, 28 Provincial Place, Cold Snake. I am on the Township Wildlife Committee. I attended all but one meeting because I had spinal surgery. I have never hunted a day in my life. So the committee is made up of residents that are not hunters, but we're tasked with coming up with solutions to resolve this problem. I compliment the Township Committee on their leadership, because leadership takes courage, and you're being very courageous by addressing this problem and hopefully supporting this amendment tonight, just a change to the ordinance. It is a public safety issue, as just articulated. Deer hitting cars, coming into cars, swerving to miss a deer. What happens if a first responder or a police officer is on Crying Road going to one of your homes because you've had an accident and they swerve to miss a deer and hit a tree? Or same thing with a fire truck. So it's a public safety issue. It's a public health issue. We've had more than 1,000 cases of Lyme disease in Colts Neck and the surrounding area, communities Howell, Marlborough, Hamilton, Homedale, and Lincroft in the last 5 years. Additionally, with the roadkill and the carcasses that are on the ground, there's an increase in scavenger activity. I'm sure if you got out in your yard, out in your property, they're circling around me all the time. I'm getting a little bit worried. So I would wonder what would happen to the public health with the increase in scavenger activity. There is an ecological effect articulated by the gentleman farmer here. There is an effect on his income. I think all of us would be very upset if 20% of our income was eaten by a deer. And there also is an ecological impact on the town because the deer are deforesting our town. And it's costing all of us every year to have the DPW pick up the debris that we have to put on the street because the deer have killed off our landscaping. So it's a public safety issue, it's a public health issue, it's an economic issue, and it's an ecological issue. I just moved to Colts Neck a year and a half ago from a township, Berners Township, up in Somerset County. They had a tremendous deer problem. They had very vocal residents on both sides of the issue. The township committee put forth an ordinance to hire professional hunters. There has not been one accident in the 10 years since they've instituted the new ordinance. And they measure by their take, obviously, but they also measure by roadkill. And before the ordinance went into place, they had high triple-digit roadkill every year. I spoke with the mayor as part of the project with the Wildlife Committee, Mayor of Berners Township back in March, and they're down to low double digits. They have not had one accident. There's not been one bow and arrow accident. There hasn't been one Dick Cheney episode with a gun.
All right, guys. Let's go ahead.
Fully support you in your ordinance.
Please go forward. Yes, sir. Yeah.
How you doing? My name is Kyle Reese. I'm at 169 Lee County Road 537 East. I just wanted to tell you guys that a lot of problems that people are having are trespassing in Green Acres or whatever. And the other thing is, the 150, when you're hunting, I'm a deer hunter, so when I'm up in a tree, most of the time hunters should be responsible enough to know that you have to shoot away from the house. That's the law. You're not, because 150, and most of the time, the 150 rule is you have to be up in a tree to be shooting on 150 with a bow and arrow. You know, it's not on the ground. You have to be 450. So the other thing is, people finding arrows. It's probably because the trespassers shoot towards your house. That's going to happen. But you guys, I would definitely like to see the township putting no trespassing signs in Green Acres. I think that's a big, huge problem. I have problems with guys sneaking in Green Acres hunting also. So that's the major problem I think everyone's having. You know, it's the outlaw hunters, not the responsible hunters. So.
Is there anybody over? We're not doing twice. I haven't even finished once yet. Front row here. Yes, ma'am. On the end. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Carol Donahue, 7 Templewood Way. I sent all of you an email today, and they're all questions, so I know you're not going to answer them, but...
You happen to talk to you offline about any questions that you have?
I'm sorry?
But you happen to talk to you after the meeting or offline?
Okay, well, this is the whole thing I was talking about, safety. If someone is going to be hunting on 5, 10 acre, or whatever, are they going to have to notify the people around them? The reason I'm concerned is there is a home near Kenwood Way that possibly could allow hunters on that property. I wouldn't be affected by it, but the people that border it would. And I'm wondering if they would have to notify the neighbors of the date, time, etc. Talking about liability, who has the insurance to cover any damage that might be either people or buildings might be accrued by people not necessarily on the hunting area, but outside the hunting area. So that's a question I have. And would we be able, as citizens, to get a copy of a comprehensive plan as to where hunting would be in effect in the township? So if you can answer those questions online, as you were.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was at 2 meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
Joyce Costa, 130 Cedar Drive. You were speaking, and you made a good point, but you talked about professional hunters.
Please don't direct your comments to anybody else.
Bernard County.
Direct it to me.
Bernard County.
That's
Burns Township.
professional hunters. That's what I was kind of like looking towards, professional hunters.
Anybody else in this row, gentlemen? Yes,
Yeah,
George.
George, jump in, hopefully everyone has that.
What was this street?
Oh, sorry,
This street?
131 Hazlet Avenue.
What town?
Yeah, Hazlet.
Now, I'm only going to take comments from township.
Okay.
All right, let's walk over to the, move over to the anteroom. Any folks in the anteroom have any comments?
If anybody in the foyer wants to speak, you just step in.
I'm going to limit the comments to township residents. Folks, come on, do this anyway. Please. Just let's get through, let everybody out there that resides in this town.
Hey, Carl, do you want to say something?
And then we're done. All right, folks over here, on this side.
Do you want to come down?
Name and address, please.
Denise Hornick.
Excuse me.
42 Orchard Lane. I water the greenway and the reservoir. I've had 2 deer left. They left their carcasses right on my property line. So they are hunting. You said it's illegal to hunt there. So they're doing it now. I guess more of them doing more of it illegally. I mean, you put signs. They even hunt from boats because I'm on the reservoir. And then they just leave the carcasses. So yes, I do see the vultures swarming around. I guess they're illegal hunters. I never asked. But they're shooting obviously towards my home because they're lying on my property. And they leave them there. And they slowly decay. My children get to watch that. We turned it into a science project, but still, didn't appreciate it.
Anybody else over here? Scotty? Come around.
Well, I think we have a difference of opinion of what happened at our meeting, but I will just comment.
Roseanne, you just said, although we know you, no one else does. You stay here.
Roseanne Scotty, 8 Toward Court. I'm the former mayor that you keep It's not that I never agree. I don't agree that we have a deer problem and that there are issues on both sides. I've always said that. And when I came to the meeting that night, the mayor had asked me, actually, if I would help him in getting the word out and, about this new ordinance change. And I didn't feel that was my job. And I respectfully disagree with what you said, that I did offer suggestions. I did, and I wrote a few of them down. What I said to you, Mayor, was that I thought that it was the township committee's job to notify the public about what was going on. Your answer to me was that people don't come to meetings and therefore they don't care, and that you felt that you had done your due diligence and just letting me know about the meeting or publicizing it, we don't know where. I totally disagree with you. I thought it was your job to publicize meetings more. It was not my job.
Sorry for
And then I said to you, when you asked if I had anything constructive to offer, I said that I thought I did. You gave me a bunch of materials to read. I read it all. But in those materials, there's something they said, and that was my point to you that night. All your materials recommend all kinds of things and how you can go about controlling deer. But one thing they recommended was using a community-based task force, the guidance of a facilitator. Stakeholders should be involved in several steps of the decision-making process and management action, including setting goals and objectives, like how many deer do we have in town, determining appropriate management techniques. If it's appropriate to just have hunting, fine, but the community doesn't understand about the other techniques. Communicating findings, conclusions to the community. Revising goals and objectives as part of an adaptive management program. Have any of these good management techniques been used? I know that's a question, but that was my constructive criticism. And that I don't feel that there's a plan in place. We should know how many deer we have. We should be able to communicate.
Come on, folks, let us speak, please.
With the community a little more. And I know Dave Barkley, many years, I know you have a farm. We've always supported the farmers controlling the deer on their properties. But when this came up, when I was mayor, this town has built up quite a bit since your dad was running that farm. I think you'll agree with that. So thank you.
Mr. Scott?
non-mayor, non-ex-mayor Scotty. But
Just make sure you tell people that you are where you live.
Vince Scotty gave a report, and it's not appropriate that I have to say what meetings I was at about it. But, and John, but his, I'd like to roll back to the basic issue. We all agree, I don't think anybody in this room disagrees that we have a problem with deer. We have an overpopulation. The basic thing was, how do we deal with it? And what's the nature of the problem? Is it a local problem? I think you yourself stated and others have stated that this is a regional, at least a regional problem. We could kill every deer in the immediate area here, and you can't say that next week you'll have the same population quantity back again. So there's nothing that says substantiated that hunting is going to solve our problem. So we have a risk-reward kind of scenario. I'm from the business world. The risk, we're going to increase the risk a little bit, let's say, marginally, on the safety side. What's the reward? Are we going to reduce this deer population? Can you say quantitatively that we're going to reduce this deer population by increasing the 5-acre thing? And let me make a point about 5-acre. You had some people here talk about their properties, farmer. Is my understanding, and the lady that you didn't let speak, not correct me for long, this is outdated, but this is from the state licensing thing, that there's a farmer license exemption. Any farmer or person who has farmland assessment with 5 acres or more can hunt deer on their property whenever they want, using whatever means. There's no restriction there. And Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry?
You can get a license, a farmer's license.
Well, this thing says, farmer hunting license exemption, New Jersey.
All right, we're talking about exemption.
Is this inappropriate? Is this not relative to?
No, but I don't want the discourse to go on.
Okay, so there also have been reports stipulating that in fact, the reverse could be true. That hunting could in fact exasperate the problem. They could create what they call a bounce back situation where you wind up with more deer population. And there was a big study done in some islands, so I don't want to read you the whole report, but where they found that, now here you have a contained area, not a regional situation like this. So now you have an identifiable population of deer in a contained area. They did the hunting. 2 years later, they had more deer than when they started out. Now here we don't have a confined, controlled area. It's a regional environment. So who knows? And I think you would agree with that. In fact, I think you were one of the ones who made the statement.
Okay. Gentleman over here.
Jason Adams, 744.
Just come out a little bit so close.
I didn't make any meetings, I don't have much to say. I do back up to a 5-acre property, and I have 2 little girls. I'm not opposed to the deer hunting or to try to reduce the population, but I'm very opposed to the 150 feet. And I know you said, or as long as you're educated or you're a professional hunter, I don't know if you have 5 acres behind your house or if you have children, but if somebody were shooting a deer near my children, I'd feel very unsafe. And for the type of town this is, and for, as people had said, educated people, some people said they come from the Midwest and they had to drive far. I don't have to drive far. It's in the corner of we overlap in the corner of my yard. So the 150 feet to me is what really is the biggest issue. I think that just sounds absurd. It just, in a common sense scenario, my property is 300 feet. I couldn't imagine an arrow not traveling 300 feet, never mind 150 feet over into my yard. And they back up to woods. So what's to say they're not facing their house? They're slightly off. My kid's in the corner of my property playing on her swings. Boom, there's my little girl with an arrow in her. And I know you say the 150 feet, and like everybody said, you know, you turn your back, but turning their back to the house isn't turning their back to my house. I live to the right of them, and they'd be looking at woods, but one mistake, you turn to the right too much. 150 feet is the only thing I think is a little, you know, is a little unusual when we go close, for especially this type of town and how close some of these houses are to properties with big yards. That's all I have to say about it.
Anybody else in the floor that I didn't get to?
I wouldn't mind making a quick comment.
Just don't give your name and address, please.
Mike Bodner from 14 Raven Road, first meeting, 5-year resident. Unfortunately, I hit a deer on the family for my first year here. lost a few shrubs this year. Haven't been attacked by a buck or anything, but see a lot of deer in New York. My concern is most of us have 1 acre, 1.5 acres, will be back up to these farms where we don't know what kind of hunting is going on there. But one thing I'd like to consider is, can you really enforce these laws? Can you really enforce or assume that these hunters are going to understand the guidelines, and is it really going to control the population? I think that those are very gray areas. I think it's a big risk for the town, and I know it scares us.
Any other Colts Neck resident that hasn't been heard yet? Yes.
Brian Grant, I live on Fairway East. I serve on the council as chairman, representing both hunters and citizens around deer management. I'm not going to speak from the committee today and speak from my personal experience. I'm a hunter. We climb into trees in total camo, and we harvest meat that we feed our children. It's organic, it's lean, it's clean, and it's a right. If I am hunting illegally and someone sees me and calls me out, I'm carrying my license, I lose my privilege to hunt. It is a privilege. We have to go through rigorous testing to get our hunting license. It's not something that's given away. It's not something that someone with a criminal background can get, for example. You have to go through the state regulations. We climb up in these trees. We sit 15 to 25 feet up in the trees, in the snow, in the cold, in the wind, and we shoot at a deer with a bow and arrow, and our target is the size of a tennis ball. I'm going to address, I have 3 children. They run in the woods. I'm 100% certain that if there's a hunter in the woods and my child walks out of the tree stand, there's absolutely no chance of an arrow being hit in that child because of what the hunter is aiming at. It's the vitals of the deer. My middle child, she's 6. She's had Lyme disease. I spent time in Robert Johnson Hospital. I know we have a deer problem where I live, and I drive every day. I drive 20 miles an hour. It adds about 10 minutes to my commute because of all the deer. So obviously, you know where I stand on the ordinance, but just from my personal perspective, a lot of people think that arrows travel far. We're up in a tree and we're shooting down. There's no way that arrow's going to... Deer don't climb tree, you're shooting down all the time. That's just the way it is. So there are unprofessional hunts out there. That gentleman over there addressed it. If I see someone who's a hunter who's doing something illegal, I'm going to pull it off myself because it's my privilege, it's my right, it's at stake.
All right, any other Colts Neck Township resident that has not yet spoken that would like to speak? Gentleman in the corner over here.
Yeah. My name is Carl Simone. I'm on Brookside Drive. I live and I have a nursery of about 10 acres, 10, 12 acres. And for 10 years I've had hunters come in with my permission and eliminate some deer. On the other hand, I've had all around me neighbors I've been concerned about with their children, both from the point of view of safety and even sensitivity of kids seeing deer slain and carried away. So I've put those rules in effect on my hunters. And so we've had good luck with regard to that. In terms of my own situation, the deer have been very invasive. They eat up my nursery. They've been on my property and have taken out shrubs I've had for 48 years. And in addition, I've had Lyme disease 4 times. So I know the downsides of that. Nevertheless, I do think that you can go hunting, and I guess another rule I've had, what the hunters have had, is they never shoot their bows on a horizontal way. They're always shooting from a stand down for the very reason of not going further. Because there has been an incident several years ago, not these hunters, but someone else wandering in, I didn't know when, and had let an arrow go, and it's come across my nursery into my property next to it, where I had a tractor, right into my tractor's gas tank. So there's a safety issue, of course. It has to be enforced and has to be taken care of. But so my opinion is that you can do this. I'd love to see it done because I think the deer are an invasive and overwhelming species now, giving us lots of problems. The worst accident that we've had is my 2 hunters coming here, coming to hunt in my property from living in elsewhere, have been run into deer on the way down. And that's been a couple accidents, and that's the worst thing that's happened in terms of our accident. So I'm for having a procedure for eliminating or reducing deer population. And I think it can be done safely, but there has to be rules set in place.
All right, any other township resident that has not spoken that would like to speak? Any other township resident? Then in the back?
I'm sorry.
I think you're the only one.
I'm Jim Northland, and I'm at 151 Dutch Lane Road. I have been to one other meeting, not a subcommittee meeting. And I understand that there are a lot of deer. My personal preference would be non-lethal control. However, I fear that this ordinance is going to bring more hunters on our land without permission. The last hunter who came called the police. He took a picture of his car. Apparently, he switched out the plate so he wouldn't get in trouble and lose his hunting privileges. So I don't allow hunting on my farm, and I think that this is going to cause more problems with enforcement.
Ma'am?
You got a quicker 12.4 and 101 other than this one, and same, I believe there is a deer problem. I'd like to see it curbed as well. I just not in agreement with that 150, and I just think if you're going to form a wildlife committee, that it should be very neutral. There shouldn't be anybody to stand to benefit from it.
Any other Cold Lake Township resident that has not spoken that would like to speak? Just state your name and address.
Sorry, Lillian Powers, Glen Road. I'm wondering, I know this is the forum for it, but will there be a continuation of studies? I agree that the study should be done. I know the Humane Society was going to weigh in. So as we progress, will there be more studies if this is not the way it culverts? Because we have a lot of 1 acre places that we're starting to deal with and escape to.
Yeah, like I indicated earlier, the Wildlife Committee will continue to meet and we'll continue to evaluate the efficacy of what we're doing and what might be done in the future. Is there any place back there? Any other Cold Lake resident that has not spoken that would like to speak?
Oops, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Joe Mabrose, 38 Raven Road. I've never been to a meeting before, but it sounds to me like we have a deer problem, totally with all of you. It seems to me like we have a lot of land and we have a lot of deer, so are the hunters like bad shots? With this amount of space, they need more space. There's not enough already. Like we should have more hunters on the limited space. And I think everyone would be happy, you know?
Comments.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Any other Cold Lake residents that has not spoken that would like to speak? Cold Lake residents. I'm being advised by council. Seeing no other Cold Lake residents that would like to speak. I'm being advised by council, but I do have to allow non-residents to speak. So, sir, again, just if you could state your name, if you still like to speak.
Okay, sure. It was just brief, my name is George Duncan, whether or not that I've ever met, but.
Last name? Just spell it.
Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N. What I was going to say about the 150-foot rule with archery is that the state actually held up that rule for a year because they didn't have it in there. They were going to put it in, and so I thought there was a lot of thought went into that rule. That's what it was.
Cindy?
Thank you. Cindy Kinsner, New Jersey Division Official Wildlife Office of Information and Education. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to Mayor and Council. I would like to remind the Council that, to clarify for some residents, that the 150-foot bow hunter safety zone was indeed put in place in 2010 to allow suburban deer management. The legislature did do a lot of research, and as you well know, that was a specific goal. And hunters, if they're hunting within that distance, a person who give permission would have to be written permission in possession and yes, shooting down toward the ground. Safety statistics demonstrate that hunting is a very safe sport. Just for reminder of this, that the average number of hunting accidents per year statewide, with millions of recreation days afield, averages 6 hunting accidents. Usually only hunters are involved statewide for all seasons, all types of wildlife. So that's just some background to remind those who have questions this evening. But regarding your ordinance, we would love to be able to support the ordinance as written and support your goals, which we do. We've had the opportunity to work together. I appreciate that. We'd like to continue that, but there are a couple of concerns, Specifically, your ordinance uses the word weapon, firearm, gun, and weapon. And by definition, a bow is a weapon. This means that your stated goal to allow bow hunting on 5-acre parcels it's not allowed elsewhere. It's only 5 acres or more because it's a bow, and bow is by law, Criminal Code 2C, is a weapon. So I'm not sure if that was the intent of the council, and it might change your view. Just because you have elsewhere incorporated the state 150-foot bow hunter safety zone into your ordinance does not eliminate the earlier portion where it defines what sporting arms are part of the ordinance. So that's our main concern, that that's not matching up with your goals. Broadly speaking, the municipality shouldn't conflict with state law. We have some concerns in the preemption department about designating a 5-acre minimum. Statewide, hunting takes place in most municipalities without any minimum acreage. And I do appreciate the concerns of safety for residents, especially those who are unfamiliar with hunting. But we want to remind you that there is concern about that, also about making it mandatory for a landowner to provide permission in writing to anyone who hunts on their land. I'm not sure that that's within the jurisdiction of a municipality to make such a requirement. So these are some of the specific areas that we wanted to bring to your attention. And between your residents' concerns and some of ours, we would respectfully request that you table the ordinance. We'd be more than happy to work with you to help meet some of your residents' concerns. We would do educational programs as we have in the past, so that those who are present tonight that weren't present in the past would benefit from that information and might then have a better appreciation for the council's decision and how the Wildlife Committee arrived at. So if that would help you, we'd be very happy to do that. But the concerns are one other concern was something that exists in your ordinance already, has been in place, and that is shooting across a property line without written permission. We believe that that is likely to be unenforceable. And when we worked with your municipality, we had hoped to revamp the whole ordinance so that each component would stand firmly, both being consistent with state law and meet the needs of your residents and the council's goals to reduce the deer population problem in Colts Neck. So any way we can be of service to you, we know we will, anytime, and we would respectfully request that you table the ordinance, although again supporting your goals for a population reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, any other resident that has not spoken that would like to speak before I close the public hearing? Anybody that has not spoken that would like to speak before I close the public hearing? Sir.
Not a Colts Neck resident. Bob Waybrough, 506 Pier Street, Hazlet. I've been a hunter for probably over 50 years. A lot of good comments on both sides, but I think common sense relates to hunters like myself. There's no way that I want anything dangerous to occur. I would take pains for an accident not to occur. If you ever observed a hunter who you think is doing something illegal or trespassing, and I do believe in having written permission from the landowner, police, that's their job. And again, statistics have shown that there are very, very, if any, and certainly none in Colts Neck, fatalities from hunting. We have a major problem here. 3 landowners in Colts Neck, one of them very prominent, allow me to hunt on their property, and I respect that privilege. And I hope that it will continue.
Anybody else before I close the public hearing? That hasn't spoken? Yes, ma'am.
No, I haven't. Mary Boggio, 7 Beaver Dam Road, Colts Neck. I have had difficulty understanding everybody tonight. There should be a microphone being passed around. I can't, this woman that just finished speaking, I couldn't understand what everything she was saying. But from what I do understand, we have a problem, and I don't understand why we're not entertaining professional golfers, why we're not entertaining entertaining the idea of professional, archers or hunters, yeah. And the other thing is, what I couldn't, are all bow hunters supposed to be up in a tree?
Yes.
All right, so that wasn't really made known until we had gotten through a lot of this, whole day, tonight. So next time, please have a...
Again, thanks for the comment. I just want to reiterate. This is not the first meeting that we've had these issues discussed. The issues have been discussed on multiple occasions, including a rather extensive presentation by the state, in which most of the issues and questions that were posited here today, or at least talked about a little bit today, were discussed at length, including that last question that was raised. So there's only so many times that you can go over these things, and I appreciate the state's offer to come in and educate, and I certainly will avail the township of that opportunity. I will indicate one other thing in light of the comment by the representative from the state. This committee listened the first time when people made their comments. We recognize that this ordinance, this proposed amendment to the ordinance, deviates from the state statute. We recognize the possibility, as expressed by the representative of the state today, that the state may take umbrage with our deviation from that statute. That our more restrictive approach, our more conservative approach, if you will, might deviate, at least according to the state, from the state statute. It was challenged to us at one of the prior meetings that this is Colts Neck, we're not afraid of a fight. I'm not looking for a fight, I don't want a fight, I want to resolve a deer problem. I want to resolve a deer problem with the least impact on the public as possible. That is what I'm trying to do, and that's the only thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm going to ask for the public support. I can assure you that these issues will continue to be discussed over the succeeding months, and certainly next spring when we have numbers and are in a position to reevaluate the efficacy of the action that we're taking here today. Assuming this ordinance is passed, I hope that you never ever even know that this ordinance was passed. I suspect that for the most part that'll be the case. But again, the goal is singular, and that is to start to turn the tide on an out-of-control deer population that in our opinion, and I believe in most residents' opinions, presents a real and imminent and present public health risk. And again, I thank the public for its comments. I'd like to close the public hearing at this point. I'm going to entertain a motion on the ordinance 2014-16. I get a second, please. Got it. Roll call vote, please.
Just some discussion. No comments, but now we have it. You can comment before you vote. Okay. Now we're good. You're up first. I had no comments in the beginning, but after listening to some members, I just wanted to share a few things before I cast my vote.
Deputy Mayor, can I interrupt for just 1 second? The people in the back of the room, and I realize, my name is Michael Fitzgerald, we're here twice a month, every month, year after year, and some of the folks come to all of our meetings, but not everyone does. This is Deputy Mayor Schatzel. You probably all introduce yourself to the back room, because some of the folks don't know who you are, and they're here for this one particular issue. But I certainly want to know, the people know my name and where I stand, and so if you would indulge Deputy Mayor, just to introduce ourselves as we speak, because they can't read our name tags and so forth like that.
Sure, I'm Jim. I have the pleasure of knowing a lot of people, I would say, the majority of people in this room, and I just wanted to comment that thank you for coming tonight, because we have issue after issue, township committees prior to myself and us, and it will happen later. Some of them bring out some more people than others. It's horrible discussion right from the beginning, right? For years, this has been discussions been going on of killing animals. But it's a public safety issue. Many of you know that my background is in public safety and public health, and I struggle with this. I've struggled with it when I was a member of the Board of Health, as liaison to the Board of Health. So this discussion, I think the mayor's comment said 2 years or something. It's probably been 12 years, 14 years. So it's been a long time. I also, many of you know, especially those that were here before, is that I truly struggled with changing this ordinance at all. But after listening to expert after expert, after reading paper after paper, and after responding to motor vehicle crash after motor vehicle crash, I really truly feel that we must start somewhere. As you, I think if you didn't know, now from the state's comments, is that this is not, we are tight and conservative here of what we're doing. Safety for me is what I do every day, what I talk about every day, and I have kids, as most of you know, so it's upmost in my mind. I truly feel that they have a higher potential of being severely injured in a motor vehicle crash with me behind the wheel and doing everything that I should do than what we're doing tonight. So with that, we're going to continue, and I will be your mayor next year. I will continue to look at this, continue to tweak it so it best fits us with maintaining the goal. And with that, I vote yes.
There is no perfect solution. I'm just happy tonight that the mayor has taken some strides towards making a solution. So I support the mayor and those residents' plea to do this. And I just ask that the public have faith in us as they have in the past during other times of public safety needs. So with that, I will vote yes, and I will support the mayor.
It's been a long time coming. We have to do something about the deer herd. It's not whether it's good for the people bad. We're trying to do the best for Pulse that we can do for them. The committee will not go away. We're going to look at numbers. We may change things. We meet back next year and change this thing all over again. We're not quitting on this project. I just hope you give us time to let it try for a year. I want to vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I happen to live right across the street. Every person on this township committee has children. Every person on this township committee, I would say with the exception of me, is involved in either first aid, fire, or both. And have taken the responsibility and volunteer on a regular basis and see the unfortunate side effects of some of the problems we have. My daughter goes off to American University on Friday, and my stepson leaves the following week. So my children are a little older than the other people on the township committee. But I was talking to my daughter, and I said to her, this would be really easy if we were talking about a problem with snakes. I don't like snakes. They're ugly, and they don't need a whole lot. It'd be really easy, and no one would come to the meeting and we'd be able to make an easy decision. But unfortunately, for the $1,500 a year that some of us take as a salary for this job, some of us take money, we have to make hard decisions all the time. Some of the hardest ones, quite frankly, involve things like this, but the things that are equally hard and equally affect other people in our community are things like laying off a police officer, which we've had to do in the past. Lay off public works people, which we've had to do in the past to control taxes and do some of the other things that are problematic for us. I will say that my two takeaways from tonight. One is, as the Deputy Mayor stated, thank you all for coming out. This is not something that we necessarily enjoy sitting here for 2 or 3 hours this time, in addition to all the other meetings, but that's what we signed on for. And we appreciate hearing the opinions. And I will tell you that there were a number of opinions that I heard that were not expressed in this meeting, because there were people, because they were in favor of the ordinance, who were afraid to come to the meeting because of the vocal opposition that has been out there. So there are a number of folks who support the ordinance. I'm sure there's plenty of folks who don't support the ordinance and oppose it, who also didn't come, but we have to try to make the best decisions that we can. The other takeaway for me is how many observations / examples that I've heard tonight of illegal conduct. It happens to do with hunting in this particular instance, but the reality is I'm hearing things that it troubles me that I'm hearing it for the first time. And that tells me that I'm failing. Because if I haven't made all of you, as a committee person and a former mayor in this town, comfortable enough to pick up the phone and call me, or call anyone else on this township committee to say things like, there's a blind built in the Green Acres, or other things that I've heard tonight, I'm failing. So I want to stop failing. So starting tonight, I'm going to do better at it. Bob has my cell phone number. Pat, I'm hoping you and I know each other for a long time, because we were introduced on this particular subject. I trust that someday we'll find something we can have some common ground on. But I will ask you if you don't buy it. Fair enough. I would ask you if you wouldn't mind parting with those arrows that you got. I'd like to turn them over to law enforcement to see if there's any way to identify from whence they came. I suspect there's not, but I'd like to see if there's anything we can do to find out
the root of the problem, either where they're being sold or who has it. I'll give them the opportunity. Thanks, Pat. The end where the blinds are, I thought they were behind 28 Ringwood? 28 Ringwood, two of them. And I assure you, with this mayor, you will see them coming down in short order. If you see them in the future, whether it be on Ringwood Lane or anywhere else in Greenwood Acres or Greenwood areas, or if you think it's Green Acres and you're not really sure, call us. We don't want them there. They're not supposed to be there. Whether it's a kid's tree fort or a hunting stand, Green Acres is not for that. So please let us know what you see and what you hear. I don't know if the woman is still here. I think she might have left. If you see someone hunting on the reservoir, I want to hear about that too. Please excuse me for failing in that regard. I'll try to be better at it. I think that this is a step in the right direction. I believe that we're moving the right way. I agree with the mayor that we're not doing everything the state would necessarily like, but I'm comfortable that we're doing what's best for this town. And Doctor, I forgot to extend it to you. If you hear or see things, I'd like to hear about it also. And with that, I would also vote yes.
Folks, again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I was really hopeful that a more full discourse could be had at a wildlife subcommittee meeting prior to today. That was my goal, that was my hope. I think good discourse amongst residents, even of vastly differing opinions, is very healthy. And I understand from our prior meetings and this meeting tonight that there are different opinions on this particular subject. I hope in the future that those of you, especially those that are passionate about this particular subject on both sides, will come to wildlife committee meetings and offer your opinions not only on this particular ordinance, but on other means of controlling the deer population, which I can assure you were discussed many times at the wildlife subcommittee meetings. The only way to get your opinion heard is to come out and talk, and again, I thank you for coming out tonight. I've expressed my opinions on this. I think this is a step in the right direction. I'm hoping that in the spring, this committee will be able to report to you that we are at least beginning to turn the tide on this public health and safety issue, and with that, I'm going to vote yes as well.
Ordinance is hereby adopted.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess to allow those of you that would like to leave to leave. We are not done with our agenda this evening. We have other things to cover. Feel free to stay and join us, but by no means feel free.